All right, today's Tuesday Tidbit is on when should I refinance? If you look online, you're going to find all sorts of rules. Um, they all use kind of the same assumption, which is you need to see 1% improvement in your interest rate before a refinance makes sense. I could not disagree with that anymore. It's like most rules that you'll find in that they're flawed and there's a lot of exceptions to it. The reason why it's flawed, somebody that only has a $200,000 mortgage is going to take quite a bit longer to recuperate those closing costs with the refinance than somebody that owes $500,000 on the mortgage. The more you owe, the more you're going to save. In addition, the closing costs on a refinance are relatively static. There's very little difference between the closing costs on a $100,000 mortgage versus the closing costs on a $500,000 mortgage. So not only is the $100,000 mortgage saving less money, but their costs are also going to be very, very similar within 100 or $200 of a $500,000 mortgage. The only piece that really changes between those is the title fees. So don't really listen to those rules. What I look for when I look for a refinance and whether or not it's going to be beneficial is I look at the recuperation costs. How much are you going to save in interest? How much are the closing costs? How long do you have to have that new loan before you're going to recuperate the closing costs? The break even point. I typically want to see a break even point at 18 months or less, year and a half. Most people can look a year and a half down the line. If people are recuperating the closing costs within a year and a half, it's a great deal. Sometimes the interest rate improvement is such and the loan amount is so large that people are recovering their closing costs within 7 or 8 months. That's very, very common. Not right now, rates are high, but generally speaking, it's very common when we start to do refinances that that's the case, in which case it's a slam dunk, no brainer, as long as you're going to be in the house for at least 7 or 8 months. We can also look at what we call no cost refinances. No cost refinances are where we increase the interest rate a little bit and then have the lender pay for your closing costs. Now, all of a sudden, the break even point, so long as you're saving any money on interest at all, is going to be 0 months. You don't even have to have that loan for a day before you're going to recoup the closing costs because the lender paid for those closing costs. However, the downside to that is it's going to come at a slightly higher interest rate than it otherwise would. All analysis we do when we look at determining whether or not a refinance is worthwhile, we can crunch those numbers very, very quickly. I put your current loan side by side with some new loan options, figure out what the interest savings is going to be, figure out what the closing costs are, how long you have to have that new loan before it's going to be beneficial for you. So all analysis we do, just let us know and we're happy to crunch those numbers for you. Thanks. Talk to you next Tuesday. Bye.